My nephew emptied my life savings, $210,000, while I was 3 time zones away. 3 weeks later, he showed up at Christmas dinner in a brand new Range Rover and announced he'd bought a lakefront cottage in Muskoka. 3 weeks after that, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. He was screaming through tears, "What have you done to me? You've destroyed everything." What I did to him wasn't loud, it wasn't emotional. It was methodical, it was legal, and it was absolutely devastating. I sat in the leather chair at my financial advisor's office staring at my portfolio balance. Zero. Not reduced, emptied. After 42 years as a civil engineer, I'd trained myself not to panic. Facts solved problems. Panic didn't. "Walk me through it again, Thomas." He adjusted his glasses, clearly uncomfortable. "The withdrawals were authorized through your online access. Correct passwords, correct security questions. 6 transfers over 5 days, all flagged as legitimate because technically you authorized them. Except I hadn't. All 6 withdrawals happened during business hours, while I was in Vancouver visiting my daughter. Only 3 people had those credentials: myself, my late wife Margaret, gone 2 years now, and my nephew Connor, 28 years old. Living in my basement for the past 18 months after losing his tech job. The boy I'd helped raise after his father walked out. The young man I'd mentored, trusted, believed in. I'd given him emergency access after my heart surgery the spring before, just in case. Thomas told me internal theft cases involving authorized access were almost impossible to prosecute. I drove home through freezing December rain with that sentence sitting in my chest like a stone. Connor's beat-up Honda sat in the driveway. Hip-hop thumped through the basement walls. I called the Toronto Police non-emergency line. Detective Sarah Kowalski arrived 2 hours later, sharp-eyed, clearly no stranger to cases like mine. "Mr. Patterson, I'll be direct. Your nephew had authorized access. That makes this civil, not criminal, unless we can prove coercion or identity theft. Banks won't help. From their view, you authorized it. Courts take years, and even winning a judgment doesn't mean collecting on it. So he gets away with it." "I didn't say that." She handed me her card. "People who steal this brazenly usually make mistakes. Give them enough rope." I went down to the basement. Connor was sprawled on the couch scrolling luxury car listings, and when I told him the accounts were empty, he performed shock beautifully, until I noticed he never once asked how much was taken. When I told him he was the only other person with my credentials, his hand tightened on his phone. "You're accusing me, after everything you've done for me?" His voice cracked on cue. When I said the police would investigate, he grabbed his coat and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I stood alone in that basement and noticed things I hadn't before. A new gaming chair, a curved monitor, a $1,500 Canada Goose jacket on the hook. 42 years of engineering teaches you one thing: every structure has load-bearing points. Apply pressure to the right ones and the whole thing comes down. Connor had just made his first mistake by running instead of staying to prove his innocence. Now I needed to find the rest. I hired Rebecca Martinez, a lawyer on University Avenue who charged $450 an hour and was worth it. "Authorized access doesn't mean unlimited access," she said. "There's an implied fiduciary duty here. We can build a case strong enough to make his life very difficult." She brought in Gary Hendricks, a former RCMP investigator who specialized in tracing money. Gary called 2 weeks later with photographs spread across his desk. 2 days after I confronted Connor, he'd put a $30,000 deposit on a Range Rover Sport, $98,000, financed the rest. 5 days after that, he closed on a lakefront cottage near Gravenhurst, $385,000, $55,000 down. $85,000 spent in 2 weeks, and he wasn't even trying to hide it. "He thinks he got away with it," Gary said. "Elderly man, trusting nephew, police won't pursue it, courts take years. From where he's sitting, he already won." I felt something settle in my chest, not rage, something colder and more precise. The feeling of finding a structural flaw and knowing exactly how to fix it. That night I built a spreadsheet. Range Rover, $98,750. Cottage, $385,000. Furniture and electronics, $15,000. Roughly $115,000 of my $210,000 already spent. My daughter Allison called from Vancouver, horrified when I told her everything. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Whatever it takes to make this right." Rebecca called again a few days later. Her forensic accountant had found something the Canada Revenue Agency would find very interesting. Connor had reported $31,000 in employment insurance as his only income, claiming to still be unemployed, while making six-figure cash purchases in a single month. It was completely legal to report suspected fraud, so I did. I filled out the CRA's tip form, attached Gary's photos and the timeline, and hit submit. Phase 1 complete. Connor showed up on Christmas Eve with gifts, a bottle of scotch, a cashmere scarf, a card begging me to talk to him. I left them unopened in the basement and had Christmas dinner with my daughter and grandchildren instead. My 7-year-old granddaughter asked where her cousin was. I told her he was busy. 2 days later, Rebecca emailed with more from Gary. Connor's girlfriend Melissa had upgraded her engagement ring, $8,500 paid in cash. More of my money funding their life together. I spent New Year's Eve alone with my case files, organized chronologically, every transaction traced. This was just another project. Specifications: Connor's complete financial collapse. Timeline: as long as it takes. Budget: whatever remained. In January, Gary called with the news that the CRA had officially opened an investigation. File number assigned. Letter going out within 30 days. Rebecca filed the civil suit the same week. Breach of fiduciary duty, conversion, unjust enrichment, $210,000 plus interest and legal fees. The process server found Connor at the cottage. Gary got the photo, Connor's face draining of color as he read the papers, Melissa behind him asking what was wrong. That night Connor called, screaming, "You sued me, your own nephew, over money you gave me for helping you." I'd been waiting for that lie. "I never gave you anything except a place to live rent-free. You're lying. This is elder abuse. I'll tell everyone you're senile. I'll get a doctor to say you don't remember your own generosity." I hung up. He called 6 more times. I blocked the number. The CRA's letter reached him on January 22nd. Documentation required within 21 days to explain the gap between his reported income and his spending. February came with no response to the lawsuit. Rebecca filed for default judgment. Then Connor's lawyer called, a polished voice named James McIntyre, offering an affidavit claiming the money was a gift for caretaking services, hoping to negotiate. "Tell your client to return every penny plus interest and I'll consider dropping the suit. The money's been spent on legitimate purchases. Then we'll see what the court says." He tried again. Said the CRA investigation was causing his client significant stress. Suggested I might withdraw my complaint. "Whether the CRA investigates is their decision, not mine," I told him. "We're done talking." Every path Connor took now led somewhere worse. If he explained the money, he incriminated himself in the lawsuit. If he stayed silent, the CRA penalties compounded. He was trapped and he didn't even know it yet. By March, Gary reported Connor trying to sell the Range Rover privately, but he still owed more on the financing than the car was worth. The cottage went up for sale too, after only 3 months of ownership. His accounts, it turned out, had been frozen pending the CRA investigation. He couldn't touch a cent of what he'd stolen without proving where it came from. Rebecca filed for an emergency injunction to stop him from liquidating anything before the lawsuit resolved. The court granted it. Gary sent a photo of the deputy serving the order, Connor ashen in his doorway, Melissa crying behind him. My phone rang at 2 in the morning on March 23rd. Connor drunk, sobbing. "What have you done to me? You've destroyed everything. The CRA wants $35,000 in taxes and penalties. My lawyer wants 8 more. I can't sell anything because of your injunction. Melissa left me. I'm going to lose everything. You took everything from me first. It was just money. You're rich, you didn't need it. I worked 42 years for that money, Connor, every dollar, while you sat on my couch plotting how to steal from the man who gave you a home. I hate you. I hope you die alone, you miserable old bastard." He hung up. I sat in the dark the rest of that night, thinking about Margaret, wondering if I'd gone too far. Then I remembered the empty portfolio, the fake shock on his face, the way he'd let me believe I'd been hacked instead of admitting what he'd done. No, I hadn't gone too far. I'd gone exactly far enough. In April, the CRA assessment landed. $41,750 owed in unreported income, tax, penalties, and interest, due within 90 days or his assets would be seized. Except his assets were already frozen by my injunction. There was nothing left for him to protect. His lawyer came back offering $85,000, everything he could scrape together. I wanted the full $210,000 plus interest and legal fees. He doesn't have it, McIntyre said. Then he can sell the cottage. Your injunction prevents that. I know. The trial began in May, Ontario Superior Court. Connor arrived thin, haggard, his expensive clothes hanging loose. Rebecca laid out 3 days of bank records, purchase timelines, forensic accounting, and Gary's surveillance photos. McIntyre's defense, that the money was a gift for caretaking, had no paperwork behind it, no employment record, nothing. On the stand, Rebecca took Connor apart piece by piece. 7 months of part-time care valued at $30,000 a month, more than a full-time nurse makes. He couldn't say how many times he'd cooked for me, driven me anywhere, or lifted a finger beyond when he asked. She held up photos of his basement apartment, before, sparse, after, filled with new electronics purchased with my stolen savings, and asked him to explain how a gaming chair constituted caretaking. He had nothing. The judge's ruling came on May 15th, not credible, breach of fiduciary duty, conversion. Judgment for $210,000 plus interest and legal costs, $261,180 total. The cottage went to auction in June. I sat in the gallery and watched Connor's face when I raised my paddle. I bought it back myself for $360,000, $25,000 under market. After fees and his mortgage, $187,000 went toward the judgment. The Range Rover sold at auction too, netting $7,000 after his loan. Balance remaining, $67,180. There was nothing left to garnish, no job, no assets. He moved into his mother's house in Scarborough. On June 30th, he filed for personal bankruptcy, but judgments built on proven fraud don't disappear in bankruptcy. Rebecca made that clear. He'll owe you this for the rest of his life. Every job, every asset, we can come for it. I spent July at the cottage, my cottage now, the place Margaret and I had always dreamed of and never quite afforded. I'd recovered $194,000 of my $210,000. But more than the money, Connor had nothing. Bankrupt at 28, credit destroyed, relationship over, working part-time in a warehouse while we garnished a quarter of every paycheck. My sister called that August, screaming that I'd destroyed her son's life. Tell your son that stealing has consequences, I said. He made a mistake, he's young. He's 28, not 18. And it wasn't a mistake, it was calculated theft. You're a monster. I blocked her number 2. I sold the North York house in October and moved to the cottage full-time. Nobody in Muskoka knew the story. They just knew William, the retired engineer who liked morning walks and afternoon fishing. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after it all began, I stood on the dock watching snow fall over the frozen lake. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, Connor. He said he knew I'd blocked him, that he was sorry, that he thought about what he'd done every day, that he didn't expect forgiveness, just wanted me to know. I read it twice, standing in the falling snow, my breath visible in the cold. Then I deleted it without responding. Sorry didn't give back the year of stress. Sorry didn't rebuild the trust he'd burned to the ground. Sorry was just a word, and words were the one thing that had never cost him anything. I went inside, lit a fire, and poured a glass of the scotch my daughter had given me. Margaret's photo sat on the mantel, smiling, forever 58. I raised my glass to her. We got our cottage, love, not the way we planned it, but we got it. Outside, the snow kept falling, blanketing the dock in white. It was finished, not with joy, but with something steadier. The cold, quiet certainty that theft has a price, that trust betrayed can still be repaid, and that even family isn't above the consequences of what they choose to do.